The unspoken assumption was that he was somehow deriving an illicit thrill from calculating the ion concentrations of vaginal fluids, that people study sex because they are perverts, or at the very least, because they harbor an unseemly interest in the matter, which makes some people wary of sex researchers and other people extremely interested. People invariably draw all these conclusions about me, about why I'm studying this, says researcher Cindy Meston of the University of Texas at Austin. That Meston is blonde and beautiful compounds the problem. If you are sitting next to Cindy Meston on a plane and you ask her what she does, she will either lie to you or she will say, "I do psychophysiological research." She loses most of them there. If they persist, I say something like, "Well, we use various visual and auditory stimuli to look at autonomic nervous system reactivity in various contexts." That usually does the trick. Even when a researcher carefully explains a sex-related project, its purpose, and its value, people may still suspect he or she is a perv. Last year I was conversing by email with an acquaintance who was investigating the black market in cadaver parts. She came into possession of a sales list for a company that provides organs and tissues for research. On the list was vagina with clitoris. She did not believe that there could be a legitimate research purpose for cadaver genitalia. She assumed the researcher had procured the part to have sex with it. I replied that physiologists and people who study sexual dysfunction still have plenty to learn about female arousal and orgasm, and that I could with little trouble imagine someone needing such a thing. Besides, I said to this woman, if the guy wanted to nail the thing, do you honestly think he'd have bothered with the clitoris? Early studies of sexual physiology came at it sideways via studies of fertility, obstetrics and gynecology, and venereal disease. Even working in these areas tended to invite scorn and suspicion. Gynecologist James Platt White was expelled from the American Medical Association in 1851 after inviting medical students to observe a consenting woman in labor and delivery. His colleagues had been outraged over the impropriety of a male doctor looking at female genitalia. Footnote. Incredibly, Victorian physicians practiced gynecology and urology on women without looking. Even a catheter insertion would typically be done blind, with the doctor's hands under the sheets and his gaze heading off in some polite middle distance. Fortunately, budding MDs were allowed to look upon and rehearse upon cadaver genitals, and that is how they learned to practice the Braille edition of their craft. In 1875, a gynecologist named Emo Nograth was booed while delivering a talk on venereal disease at the newly formed American Gynecological Society. The sex researcher and historian Vern Bullock in the 1970s landed on an FBI list of dangerous Americans for his subversive activities, e.g., publishing scholarly papers about prostitution and working for the American Civil Liberties Union to decriminalize, among other things, oral sex and the wearing of dresses by men. It wasn't until the past half-century that lab-based science embraced the pursuit of better, more satisfying sex. Sexual dysfunction had to be medicalized, and the pharmaceutical companies had to get interested. It's still an uphill slog. The current conservative political climate has made funding scarce. Meston plans to seek funding to research fertility, a subject that's easy to fund but does not interest her, simply to help keep her lab afloat. Several researchers told me they keep the titles of their grant proposals intentionally vague, using the word physiological, for example, in place of sexual. This book is a tribute to the men and women who dared, who to this day endure ignorance, closed minds, righteousness, and prudery. Their lives are not easy, but their cocktail